Anti-airs unlock the ground game. It doesn't matter how good your neutral is if you can't stop your opponent from jumping over and over. Having reliable anti-airs means you can keep your opponent on the ground where you can use all the other tools at your disposal. Anti-airs are also an essential piece of one of the oldest fighting game strategies, the fireball uppercut game plan. Throw Hadokens or sonic booms until your opponent gets frustrating jumps and then anti-air them when they do. Projectiles exist so characters can fight each other at a distance, and with them come their own mind games. Whenever two projectiles clash, whether you like it or not, you are now in a fireball war. Being able to navigate a fireball war is an essential skill in Super Turbo, but almost non-existent in Street Fighter 6. Let's look at the rules of engagement, the different ways you can get the edge in a fireball war, and why they're not as big of a deal in a game like Street Fighter 6 and a huge deal in Street Fighter 2. Fireballs follow two main laws. You can't throw a fireball until you've recovered from throwing your last fireball, but you also can't usually throw another until the old one is no longer on screen. So when two fireballs clash and both players have recovered, they can immediately throw another. If they both do, they essentially repeat the scenario, both projectiles will clash again. But if one player jumps and the other immediately threw a fireball, they likely won't recover in time to anti-air successfully. So in turn, you might pause for an instant to see if your opponent jumped, and if they did, you get your anti-air. But if your opponent didn't hesitate, they can get a small edge as they can act first, either getting to throw their next fireball before yours, or maybe they use the downtime to reposition either closer or further away from you. It loosely creates this fireball triangle, but this triangle is heavily dependent on spacing in each character's particular fireball. How fast their fireball is traveling and how quickly they recover from throwing the fireball are two really important factors. At further ranges, it takes longer for a fireball to reach your character, so you may be able to pause to scout out if your opponent jumped, but still have enough time to throw a fireball of your own. The other reason why I say it loosely creates a triangle is that there are other options you can use in a fireball war. Neutral jumping takes advantage of the second law of fireballs, where they can't throw another until the old one is gone off screen. By having their old fireball harmlessly pass beneath our character, we are locking our opponent out from throwing another projectile. This is not as effective against faster moving projectiles, as they'll likely already be off screen by the time your character touches the ground again. Projectile invincible moves give characters a way to advance past projectiles without jumping over them, and this is a niche technique, but the Shoto Killer is another tool in Guile's arsenal. Ryu vs. Guile is a classic matchup. Guile needs to charge his projectiles, but he can throw one faster and often recovers faster, giving him an edge up close. After their fireballs clash, if Ryu goes for another projectile, Guile can instead use his frame advantage to throw out his spinning back knuckle and counter-hit Ryu in his attempt to throw another fireball. As this is a matchup example, you may or may not have a similar situation where you need to be aware of a long-range normal after two projectiles clash. The more important thing to note about this interaction is that some characters might have faster or slower recovery on their projectiles, and that difference can lead to one character getting a frame advantage when two projectiles clash. But why are fireball wars a central aspect of Street Fighter 2 and almost non-existent in Street Fighter 6? Starting with the strongest and most obvious example is the drive parry. Drive parry creates additional counterplay against projectiles at every part of the screen. If you ever have to block a fireball, you can instead go for a parry. Landing a perfect parry on a projectile vaporizes it. It's as though it was never even there and you can do your next action unimpeded. So in closer ranges, where you may choose to pause before throwing another fireball, where you might normally be forced to block and take chip damage, you can attempt a perfect parry instead. Some characters can feint throwing a fireball or use one with shorter range to cause your parry to whiff and make you waste drive meter from afar, and using it up close at the wrong time will get you punished. Nonetheless, parry is still incredibly strong. Now, drive parry on its own is a universal defensive tool that can shut down projectiles with good reactions or good reads, but that is not the only thing making fireball wars less common. Spending drive gauge to get the enhanced version of projectiles does more than just cause the projectile to have additional hits. In previous games, when two projectiles clash, if they had the same number of hits, they would cancel out. And if one had more hits than the other, it would continue through after the clash. Often your regular projectile would be 1 or 2 hits, and then the EX version would have additional hits. OD projectiles not only have additional hits but come with another upgrade. They'll destroy non-overdrive projectiles. The fireball rules say that when Ryu's Denjin Hadoken and Ryu's OD Hadoken connect, they should cancel out as they both have 2 hits. But in Street Fighter 6, the OD fireball completely destroys the other. ST doesn't have EX projectiles, it doesn't have parries, and it doesn't even have dashes, let alone drive rushes. So ODing is stronger, each block projectile deals permanent chip damage and pushes you further away, making it harder to get in. Whereas in Street Fighter 6, you have more ways to shut down projectiles and a lot more ways to approach. However, don't get it twisted and think projectiles aren't good in Street Fighter 6. Sonic Boom is mad good, Jury doing fireball drive rush is really strong, they've tried to compensate projectiles in some way to counterbalance drive parries. The additional ways to interact with projectiles means there is less incentive to throw projectiles over and over until somebody makes the read that they should jump or wait for the jump. Although I enjoyed the long-range mind games that come with Fireball Wars, I also enjoy them not being as commonplace as a spectator. To someone that doesn't know what a Fireball War is or how it's fought, it just looks like 2 professional players are spamming the same move over and over, which they 100% are, just the reasoning behind it is not as apparent. If you want to play a game where you get to practice navigating a Fireball War, check out Super Turbo, but if that isn't your cup of tea, Street Fighter 6 is there too. Different games emphasize different skills. One thing I didn't include here is what is a fireball trap, and that's because Infectious has a great video walking through what a fireball trap is, how it works, and what to do against it. Go check it out.